So today I want to talk about my on-location headshot setup, so essentially my portable studio. And the reason for this video is I did another video not that long ago, which I'll link in the description, about how to quote for headshots. It's actually been one of my most successful videos to date. And as a result, I got a lot of questions regarding about the setup that I take with me to achieve the results that I do. And so that's what I want to talk about in this video. And it's not so much about what cameras I use or what lenses I use, more the practical stuff, like the bits and pieces that I take with me so that I can literally fit in anywhere and achieve repeatable results that gets me booked over and over again. And at the end of the video, I do have a time-lapse video of me setting this up in a bank in a very cramped location. So if you stick around to the end, you'll see that. But if you are new to the channel, my name is Richard. I'm a full-time studio owner and photographer here in Australia. Our studio turns over multiple six figures per annum. I say that in an effort to try and give myself a little bit of credibility that I know what I'm talking about. And I make these videos because I enjoy talking about the business of photography, and also I do have visions of becoming a speaker and educator into my 60s when I decide to hang up the camera. So when I first started doing headshots, one of the big problems I had when I went on location was having enough room to do it, finding a place to set up, and also overcome absolutely hideous lighting, because one of the reasons that I was getting booked was that they would send me through these examples of their previous commercial headshots. And to put it bluntly, they weren't very good. You could tell that they were either using direct flash or they were using, ambient light sources or windows, and they just didn't look very good. And one of the reasons I did get booked a lot was because they would see my portfolio of very crisp studio shots. But then the issue was I had to replicate that on location. And so I had to come up with a way that would work and would fit in everywhere. Now, one of the problems I had when I started was I was using, rounder, modifiers to try and get that look, big umbrellas. This is a pretty good example of what I was running into all the time and continue to run into this day. And what you're looking at here is I'm putting up a backdrop. And as you can see there, it's quite narrow. That's only half of a width of a normal paper roll. And I've got a photocopier to the side there and a wall to the side over there. And this is what I would run into a lot. Like, in other words, for example, in a medical center, I would sometimes be shooting down hallways and I'd be having lights sort of coming in through the doorways to the consulting rooms to try and make it work. And so that's what this video is about, is the practical side of going on location and creating repeatable results so you get booked over and over again. But at the core of all this, I want to cover first are the three main things. And the three main things is one, a C-stand, a humble C-stand, okay, which I'll show you in a minute, a half roll of paper, okay, and then also 2 lights and 2 modifiers, okay. And let me run through each of those now. So the first thing is, hopefully you'll see this. So the first thing is the C-stands, okay. So that's this guy here, and that's it there. I use it like that. And the reason I've got that is so that I can put half rolls of paper on, like that, okay. And that's it. So that's what I use that C-stand for, is to hold the paper up. And the good thing is, it's a bit hard to see, maybe I can lift it up, but it's a very small footprint, okay? Which means that you can get it backed up to walls, because you're going to run out of space pretty quickly. So what you're doing is you're maximizing the space and you're using that. I have 3 different rolls. But the one that I use probably 95% of the time is just a plain white roll, okay? But I also have black and gray, okay? So that's that. And then the other thing too are these strip boxes. Now when I use them, I don't use these grids. I just have them exposed just like that, okay? And the reason that I use strip boxes as opposed to rounder modifiers, which would make more sense, is because sometimes you want to do full length. And that's the beauty of using the paper rolls, is because you can run them all the way to the ground, okay? And then you can do full length, and you can also light them full length with these strip boxes, and you get quite a good look with them as well, okay? But they're the 3 main things that I used when I'm out on location. And the main reason for this particular setup is I can squish it into pretty much most locations. I'll put a photo on the screen now, and this is a photo from one of my biggest clients, okay? I go there probably once a year and update their headshots, and this is what it looks like. And so what you've got here is as you can see, I'm repeating myself, with the 2 strip boxes, there's the roll of paper up there. I've got the camera on a tripod. In this case, I've got enough room to use a 70-200 lens, okay? And then what I've got is that orange cable there is tethered to an iMac, and that way then their marketing lady, she can keep an eye on the photos coming off the camera and help me choose, or not help me choose, but she chooses the photos that they're going to be buying. And so what that does is enables me to do it in real time. That's really important. And that way then if it's not working, or they're not feeling it, or they're not liking it, I can just keep doing the same person until they get something they like. And that's that setup there. That's quite a sophisticated setup. That's sort of because I do quite a lot of people in one go. A lot of the time I won't be tethered to a computer. Sometimes I'll just show them the back of the camera. Super simple. Sometimes I have, well, in my case I use Canon cameras, and that enables me to essentially tether to an iPad through the Wi-Fi function. But whichever way I do it, I'm always getting to select the photos. But that's a really good example of how it looks. And the good thing with that is that not only can I do that then on location, but when they send in like their new employees, because they do, like a lot of places will send in their new hires just for one photo, they can send them into this studio here, and I can set up exactly the same and get exactly the same result. I use a white wall in this case. I don't roll out paper. I don't need to. But the point being is I can replicate the lighting setup wherever I go, which is really important. That can be the real problem that a lot of these places want to overcome, is inconsistency. You know, like they've had a photographer come in and they do the shots. They think, oh, that looks great. And they come back again, and then because they've used window light or something like that, or a flash, you know, an on-camera flash, and then bouncing it off the roof or something like that. But then they move and everything changes. Then they get these inconsistent looks, and they look at them. I find the case in these businesses that I go to is that often they won't know what it is they don't like, but they just know they don't like it. And in my opinion, it's usually the inconsistency. And a very random point, just I'll throw in here, is if you do something like this job that I was referring to before, where you're going back over and over again, do yourself a favor, write down all the settings that you've been using, the distances, the focal lengths, the whole lot, so that way then you don't have to reverse engineer it when you go the next time, or when they send a person in. Because sometimes what I found myself doing was, because when I started I was new to it, I'd go back and look at these photos and go, how did I do that again? You know what I mean? So I'd go and look at all the data and try and reverse engineer what I'd done in the past to make it look the same. Do yourself a favor and write all these settings down. It will make your life a lot easier going forward, I promise you. Just talk a little bit more about these strip boxes here. Okay. I just use the cheap ones. I've literally had mine for years. I use those Godox ones. I got the biggest ones I could get. I couldn't tell you what they are, but whatever they are, they're the biggest. If they had bigger ones, I'd get those. I kind of mentioned this before, but one of the tricks I found is if you kind of crisscross the tops like that, you know what I mean? You'll avoid getting that cat's eye catch lights in their eyes. And what you can do is, if you want to be anal about it, is you can Photoshop sometimes a second catch light out, okay? But I find that people don't seem to care too much about that. The other thing too with these strip boxes, my strong recommendation, this is just a small tip, is don't pull the bloody things apart to take them on location. Just leave them assembled and chuck them at the back of your car. And to be honest with you, I just throw stuff on top of them to squish them down. Because trust me on this, you don't want to be getting on location having to put, you know, soft boxes together, because it just sucks. Because I guarantee you'll get there, you'll be setting up, and you'll have one of the CEOs rush and say, I've got to meet, you know, they'll say something like, look, I know we're scheduled for 9 o'clock, but I've got this urgent meeting I've got to attend to, can we do it now? And you don't want to be farting around with gear, you know, fumbling around, because they're hard to get together, those things, in my opinion. I hate them. I'd much rather just change them over every 5 years or so, rather than try and preserve them by pulling them apart. That's just a small random tip. If you've been watching this channel a while, you'll know that I don't talk a lot about the actual craft of photography, but I'd like to give you a few tech tips that can save you some real pain, if you like. And the first one is, and I can't take credit for this, but always shoot with a custom white balance. And so if you don't know how to do it, just buy a grey card. Okay, I've had this one for years. And make sure you shoot a custom white balance for every single shoot. Now, if you don't know how to do it, if you YouTube it, you'll figure out how to do it. It's really simple. But I promise you, it will save you or your retoucher or whoever hours of second guessing. I remember before I started doing that, what I found was I'd be looking at the photos, looking at their skin tones going, is that right? And it can really mess you up, especially when you get into corporate situations where all the ladies are doing their own makeup. So some will look orange, some will look kind of pale. You know what I mean? There's no rhyme or reason to it a lot of the time. So at least if you set your camera up for a custom white balance, you'll know that you're okay. And more importantly is your skin tones will be accurate. So if you work in multicultural organizations, what I've found in recent years is, excuse me, is that people with darker skin tend to be sensitive towards that, and they want to be able to retain their natural skin tones. And the amount of, I'm really serious, the amount of compliments I've got because I've got their skin tones right are too many to count. They go, oh my God, you know. And all I've done is use a custom white balance, so there's that. Now, the other thing I would do, this is just a tip, is I would shoot, in the advent of corporate stuff, I'm talking about corporate stuff here, okay, I would shoot super crisp. Now, what I mean by that is this. I would shoot at f8, okay, that way then the photographs are really sharp from the nose to the back of the head. And the reason for that is, the reason, in my opinion, that you want to do that is because you want to be able to easily cut out the photos, meaning in Photoshop, extract them onto different backgrounds or marketing purposes. So that way, when you deliver the photos to their marketing people or the advertising agency or the web developer, whoever it is you're delivering them to, they will love you for it and have you back again. Because if you're shooting at like f1.2 and having their eyelash in focus and the rest everything's all beautifully blurry, which is a gorgeous portrait, but not very practical for corporate work. So my suggestion would be, this is just my suggestion, you can do whatever you want to do, right? But I would suggest setting your camera up for what I call the black box, meaning, in my case, this is my general rule of thumb, is I will generally go f8, 1/250th for shutter speed, because that's as high as this camera can go without messing up the synchronization of the lights, okay? And ISO 100. And if I take a photo, right, see that's black now? That's actually the photo, because I've actually removed all of the ambient light from the setting, from this room, with the settings on my camera. So the light that gets added will be only coming from the strobes, okay? And so that way then, your lighting will always be consistent. You're not getting that hideous mixed lighting that you get off the overhead fluoros and things like that. And in the video I'll show you at the end of this, it's a pretty good example of this. Like there's a fixed table and a fixed overhead fluorescent light that lights the table that I can't turn off. And the reason I can't turn it off is because in this case I'm in a bank. And to be able to turn that one light off, you have to turn all the lights off in the building. See the problem? Which means I can't trade. So in this particular instance, I was there in the morning and people were coming in and out in between meetings. And so I just find if just my experience has been, if you do that and do it all the time, then you don't have to think about it. It's not very exciting photography, but it's very practical. It's very meat and potatoes. Very meat and potatoes photography, but it looks great. And we run through some of the extra accessories I think are a really good idea to take with you. Now, the first thing I always recommend having is a tripod. Now, the tripod is not for steady shots, but the reason for the tripod is you can put it on the tripod and you can direct your people without having the camera in your hand or having it squished up to your face. That's really important because often you've got no time with these people. So there's that. And the other reason being is you can put the tripod against the wall. So if you've got no room, like I've done this in medical rooms before where I've had no room, where I've had to actually put, I'm not exaggerating, I've had to put the tripod up against the wall and then kind of be shooting like that, just to get that extra half a meter distance made all the difference. The next thing too is I would strongly recommend is gaff tape. Okay, I'm nearly out, I need to go and get some more. But just to gaff down the paper, because I guarantee you, if there's a way people will find a trip over something, they will, okay? So I strongly recommend you do that. The other thing too is these clamps. I sometimes forget these and I just always curse myself. The reason for the clamps, okay, is when you put your roll up here, you know, when you put your paper roll up here, if you clamp the roll there, okay, it will stop the roll from rolling out, because if you don't have that, your paper will just start falling down. The other thing worth mentioning are lights. Now, I think it's really wise to have wireless lights, you know, battery powered lights. And the reason I say that is because you haven't got cables on the floor for people to trip over, but the more important reason is that you might find yourself in spots without PowerPoints. I've actually, honestly, I've done them in car parks, you know what I mean? Because that's the only place I can get some clear space to do the job. And the lights that I choose to use are these AD200 Pros. I can't speak highly enough of these lights. I've been using them for years and the bulbs are still working. I did a job once with 150 headshots in one day, and I just used these two lights on one charge. I had backup, but I didn't need it. The only thing I will say against them is that they do have this fault where, because the battery goes in like this, right? You have to push it down for it to work, and so you have to put like a rubber band on it so it contacts properly, which isn't ideal. And this one's particularly bad. That's why I've actually gaff taped the battery in so it holds in place, otherwise it doesn't fire. But aside from that, they're remarkably good value for money. They're absolutely incredible. Like I said, I've been using them for years, and they've been fine. Next absolute must-have thing, in my opinion, is the humble beach cart, this thing here. Okay, now I've got tens of thousands of dollars in camera gear, and I think this is the best money, literally the best money I've ever spent. For those of you who have done corporate work, you'll know what I mean. Often you'll be parking in car parks, having to walk great distances and up elevators and things like that, and so to try and carry all your gear is just difficult. And what I've found is everything will fit into it. So I'll show you a photo. I've actually found a photo off my phone of what that looks like, but I strongly recommend you get a beach cart. They're absolutely terrific. I'll just show you this time-lapse video of me setting up in a location. This is the bank that I mentioned earlier. And what's going on here is the table in the room is fixed to the room. It's a tiny little boardroom to have meetings in. And so you can't move the table. It's actually locked in. And so this will give you a good idea of how you can kind of make everything fit with everything I've been using. And so I'll just run through it now. And so as you can see, there's that table. See, you've got all the cabling. I'm putting up that C-stand there. The two stands, see, I've got them quite slim. And then the two strip boxes which I've got over the table, and then from there I've got my tripod there, which I've got. Oh, hang on, that's not the tripod. The two lights in there. That's the paper rolled down. There's the clip. I think I just put the clip in. No, I just put the clip in then. I think. Then I put the lights in. Oh, that's all I've got, unfortunately. And that's a really good example of a really tight space. Again, a table you can't move, everything's hardwired in, and why this setup works so well. And then finally, I want to talk about why this gets me rebooked. Now, so like I kind of said before, is that this just enables me to get professional results wherever I go. And what I've found is that companies have mentioned to me that they've had people in before and weren't happy with the results. They weren't happy with the level of professionalism. They weren't happy with how quick they were. They weren't happy with the results. And when I say they weren't happy with the results, is they couldn't articulate what they didn't like, but they just didn't like them, you know. And I can see what they are. We're talking about bad shutters and things like that. And so by doing this, by basically making it where you can repeat what you could achieve in the studio at a location, they are really, really impressed when you turn up and have all this stuff, okay? And it's not the stuff so much, it's more the fact that you can do it and you can make them look pretty good without retouching on the back of the camera or on the computer or iPad or whatever it is you're using. And they go, oh wow, and they kind of get it, okay? That's what gets me the results. So they can, and the amount of work I've got, because they've been confidently referred to other places, because I can achieve these results over and over again. It's not rocket science. It's really easy, and it's not. And we're not talking huge investments either. It's very simple. It's not a very elaborate setup at all. The only other thing I would mention that I forgot to mention during this is, for God's sake, take backups. Seriously, treat it like a wedding, because it can be so difficult to get these bookings sometimes. You know, like the amount of effort and wrangling for these people to set up photo shoots in really busy businesses. You know, you got people, you know, you got to do it in between when people are going on leave and all that type of thing. And if your gear breaks down and you haven't got a backup, or if you're not shooting redundant to two cards or whatever, honestly, it's the quickest way to get a bad reputation. You know what I mean? And they will understand it. They will understand that things go wrong, but they won't forgive it. That's what I've learned anyway. They'll say, no, we understand 100%, and then you just won't get booked again. Okay, that's just my suggestion. You can do whatever you want to do, but that's what I've found. Look, I won't ramble on anymore. I've spoken for too long. This took way longer than I thought it would, by the way. I want to thank you for watching. Just a note, sorry this is a bit late. I've been really busy. I did a course. I did an online course for 2 weeks in a row, which I was busy with. I may have to scale these videos down to like maybe once a fortnight. I'm struggling to make them once a week, which is my original goal. We're just too busy in the studio, and we're coming to a really busy period up to Christmas. But I'll do my best. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. If you got anything out of this, I'd love you to like it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I'd love you to subscribe. Apparently that really helps with the algorithm, comments and subscriptions apparently. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'll do my best, like I said. Until next time, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Keep on trucking, keep on smiling. Thank you.